For my craft, I decided to take this entertainment cabinet that was used in my daughter's room and hopefully turn it into a beautiful cabinet with plank doors and an added shelf to the interior. I chose this project because I redid my daughter's room over the summer and it turned out amazing, with the exception that she still had an unappealing piece of furniture in her room. The area of occupation this falls under would be carpentry, and I would classify it as that because the craft involves working with wood and tools. For this project, I needed the following materials, supplies, and tools. I did this project with my best friend, Michelle Keller, who's also an interior designer. She gave me verbal and physical assistance throughout the entire project because she has a lot of experience and I don't. This project was done in Michelle's garage. Her garage has a lot of stuff in it, so we tried to push things to the outskirts of the garage and we put a tarp down in the middle for our working space. I personally had a hard time working with so much clutter and mess around me. I would choose to have a tidy work environment because I find that I can think more clearly when things are clean. We always worked during the daylight hours with the garage door open, so we had plenty of sunlight and ventilation. We usually worked on Friday mornings from like 11 to 2. The first step involved flipping the cabinet over and removing both doors, and then measuring all of the wood for the sides of the cabinet and the front doors, and then cutting with a miter saw and nailing with a nail gun. Using 2 nickels as spacers, one at each end, I started nailing the planks to the sides, starting at the bottom and moving up. Step 1 concluded when the 2 doors and the 2 sides were complete. The second step for this project was to paint the entire cabinet and add the legs. I used chalk spray paint. I sprayed the doors and the side of the cabinets once and let it dry. Adding the legs was the tricky part. Michelle came up with an idea of making a template out of cardboard with a hole in it, so I knew exactly where to drill the hole into the cabinet to screw in the legs. The template idea ended up working great, and I was able to attach the 4 legs with no problems. After the legs were attached, I did 2 more coats of paint over the entire cabinet. The third step was adding an interior shelf, reattaching the doors, and adding the door hardware. For the fourth step, I stained the piece of wood that was going to be the top of the cabinet. Once it was finished, I nailed it down, and then I measured and cut the micro molding that went around the whole outside edges of the cabinet, and I nailed those down and used wood glue to make sure all the pieces stayed where they needed to stay. The fifth and final step was the finishing touches of caulking, sanding, using wood filler, and putting a polyurethane coat on the top piece of the wood. This was the part of the process to make it look finished and pretty. Completing this occupation became a part of my Friday routine. Fridays are the only day I have off of work, so this is a day I spend a lot of time on school, and this just became part of my Friday routine. The 2 main body structures used are both in the nervous system. The first body structure is the frontal lobe. This activity required movement, judgment, and problem solving to a high degree. It was more of a mental than physical activity because I had to figure out how to make the cabinet look a certain way with no manual to follow. I had to problem solve, for instance, in how to place the wood planks on the front doors to make it look the most appealing. The second was the diencephalon. This part of the brain helped me with the movement and cognitive functions required of this craft. This activity required precise eye-hand movements such as holding the wood down while nailing it, and also in the cutting of the wood. Working memory was required for me to mentally manipulate different pieces of information, recall and utilize chunks of information temporarily. The measuring, cutting, and nailing of the wood required working memory. I had to remember the length of each piece of wood as I was measuring to cut it. I also utilized this in problem-solving skills such as adding the legs and hardware. This craft also required eye-hand coordination, which was imperative because I had to visually place the wood slabs in the correct location before they were nailed down. In addition, adding on the micro molding to the top required precise eye-hand coordination to get it on correctly. The motor skill coordinate was essential to this activity because it used 2 or more body parts together to manipulate, hold, or stabilize objects. An example of this was placing nickels at either end of the wood to have an even space between the planks and holding it all in place while nailing the pieces of wood into the cabinet. I had to use the process skill chooses, which was essential because it involved selecting the proper supplies, materials, and tools to complete each step of the process. For instance, using a nail gun instead of a hammer helped with the precision of the nail because the wood could have splintered if it was not nailed in quickly and accurately. I also used the process skill uses, which was essential for safety reasons, so that I knew how to use the miter saw and have proper protection for myself, such as safety glasses. It was also important to know how to use a nail gun safely. There were a number of safety considerations. I needed to wear safety glasses. I needed to be extremely careful when using the miter saw and the nail gun. I needed to have proper ventilation when painting, and I needed to use proper body mechanics when moving the furniture. I could have made the task easier by not adding the wood paneling to the side of the cabinet. I could have made the task harder by using a hammer and nail instead of a nail gun. This would take more physical strength, time, and precision. I experienced enhancement in occupational performance. I developed the performance skill of learning how to work with wood and tools that I've never worked with before. I increased my knowledge and skills by learning how to use the tools and also to figure out cognitively how to build something without an instruction manual. The activity I completed was something I would consider that a man would be better at doing, so to successfully complete the task on my own with the help of a female was a very rewarding, fun, and confidence-building experience for me, and best of all, it made my daughter very happy.